I just tried to do a second in my series. I was trying to do it on Elizabeth Warren, who I admittedly don't know that much about. Like, I've been following her, but there's kind of been some certain impediments. So what this is supposed to be is a conversation between myself as someone who thinks that it's important to consider Yang in the conversation, whether it gets elected or whatever, to someone who supports Elizabeth Warren. I'm a Canadian. I love politics, I guess, but I also don't know lots about politics. But I try to listen and read and decipher it because I think America is really important. I think that a healthy America is more likely to bring about a healthy China, and a healthy American in China leads to a healthy Russia and Europe, and those are important things, right? So because of that, I follow the American politics because I just think that there's value to having a real conversation there. They affect a lot of the world. Anyways, so to an Elizabeth Warren supporter, I have to try to imagine why you might support Warren. And so from my perspective, you probably support Warren. You probably support Bernie Sanders in a way, but maybe are scared from some of the extreme elements, that you think that maybe he's not possible to elect, that you think that she'll be able to unite the progressive and the Democratic side of the party. I would think that you think that she'll be able to appeal to some women voters. What else? I think she is shown to be quite the politician, for better or for worse, right? Like, from my perspective, that's part of the reason why I haven't paid as much attention to her, because I'm not looking for someone who's just a politician, who's just going to do exactly what the DNC says. And I think that she's interesting because, she really has policies that wouldn't be what they would want. But she seems to be kind of trying to straddle those two sides. And I can imagine that's really valuable to some people, right? Where they just don't want the world to explode. And they're slightly concerned that if they go as far as Bernie Sanders, that he wouldn't be the one. I would imagine there's a lot of Elizabeth Warren supporters who are having a moment of doubt because of the way she attacked Bernie. I just think that there's a real number of people who are sort of on the fence, and all of a sudden their eyes might have gotten open to that she has told some lies, and she has in the past. Now she's attacking Bernie with something that I don't think. Maybe you do believe that he really was saying something super misogynistic, or he said anything misogynistic in some conversation related to what she's conveying. Like, I'm not saying that they didn't have this conversation, but I don't think there's any chance that he was saying something misogynistic, and I think that a lot of Warren supporters know that he wasn't. Like, that just, he might have said something, and there might be a way to translate that into what she's saying, but I don't think that, if there was a recording and we all got to judge it, that we would think that that's what he was saying, right? It could be, he's got a really good record of integrity, and she's got a really bad record for not telling the truth. But obviously you guys all know that if you're Elizabeth Warren supporters, and I think for some that was kind of like, they peeled off at that point, and then probably for others that's just not important, or maybe you really truly believe he is misogynistic. I don't think you do. Anyways, so she's a voice of reason for some people. Like, they're, the people who aren't willing to go as far as where Bernie Sanders is, and some pretty scary stuff has come out about Bernie Sanders, and some of that stuff, not about Bernie Sanders, his character's been really great, but some of his supporters have been a bit scary, right? Like, I think he's got such integrity that he covers over a large amount of sins, or whatever, of his people, because he seems to have that integrity. But I think there has to be some people within Warren's party that, that either strengthens their perspective that Warren is a better candidate, or that maybe there's some people who are like, who else has a voice That's going to be important. And I would like you to consider if the fact that if they did not manage to defeat Donald Trump, who would have the voice that you would want having a conversation for this next year? Who's going to push the Overton window in the most positive way for not just the United States' health, but for the individuals, for the country, for the states, for their neighbors, for the world, you know? And I just think that his commitment to data-driven information is going to make a really big difference when society starts speeding up and we have to start making better decisions more quickly. So just to quickly go over some of his policies that maybe you would be interested in. He wants to make cannabis not illegal federally. He wants to make drug use safer. He wants to change. He really has some advanced sort of sets of ideas on valuing like humanity, putting people first, and not just saying, okay, GDP went up, that means we're all great. GDP goes down, that means we're all bad. Like there may be other ways. Like so, for instance, he'll talk about the suicide rate when it spikes, or other factors that show that maybe we're not all great, like mental health and shooting and certain types of like the fact that the last 3 years people in the United States, that the death rate or basically people haven't been living as long for the last 3 years, and that's unusual in a developed country, and there's no reason really we should be expecting that, especially if the GDP has been going up and the market's been doing well and we're saying, oh, this is the best it's ever been, and then all of a sudden people are dying younger, and we got these record levels of depression, and maybe some of that's not, I mean, I know this is hard for you guys maybe to hear because you don't hear this much, but maybe some of that's not Trump's fault. Maybe some of the reason why he really did get affected was because there were some problems that were already brewing, and people were already concerned that they weren't getting an accurate view of what was happening from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, ABC, from wherever, even the New York Times or the Washington Post. And so people have started to doubt the mainstream media a little bit, and that's been growing and growing and growing. And part of that's because there are real problems that maybe aren't being reported, and maybe Trump was addressing some of those problems. But what if we were to headlong look at the issues we're facing and just use the brains that we have to try to think a little bit harder about how we can make the world a better place, what conversations we need to have. He's got so many policies, there's like over 100 or something like that. And some of them are scary, like, I don't know, safe injection sites. That would be scary. That's not so scary to Canadians, maybe, or what else would be scary? I mean, just giving people money, higher taxes, those things. Like he's into some sort of VAT tax, and that's scary to some people. And there's all these different things that different people are going to find scary. But don't we want to have a conversation? Don't we want to actually use the information we have? And we could try some things, and maybe some of his ideas, won't make it to the table, and maybe some will make it to the table, and we do them, and the data shows that it's not helpful. Well, shouldn't we have a perspective that if it's not helpful, we're not just so committed to it, we're actually using the data to make course corrections? If the world's going to be moving faster, if things are going to be changing faster, if some of the changes are unavoidable, if they're automation, if they're AI, if they're changing markets, whatever it is, if it's because our brains are changing because we're all on the internet and our kids won't even know what it's like. In that place of change, don't we want someone who's using their mind, who's using the information at hand to at least try to get this under control? And don't we want him to be driving a finely tuned machine? That perspective. I don't know. What else would I say about Elizabeth Warren? I'm sorry I don't know that much about her. I don't know. There's been certain things that maybe I sort of grouped her in with Bernie Sanders, and maybe that's not fair. And then I sort of evaluated what I considered to be their integrity levels and the likelihood that I was going to be having truth and that they actually believed what they were saying. And maybe I've been a little dismissive, and maybe I'll try to consider why she might be a good option more, especially now with all this stuff coming out with how scary Bernie's supporters might be, and he's been showing kind of like a level of weakness that maybe it's integrity, right? Maybe it's integrity. But then you also have this other like little devil on your shoulder saying maybe it's not integrity, maybe it's weakness, and maybe it's the kind of weakness that leads to trouble if all of his supporters are so, not all of his supporters, I'm sorry, some of his supporters are a little extreme, and I don't know. I mean, there's some really wonderful Bernie supporters. Like 90% of them are great. So I don't think about that too, right? That's important to consider. Um, anyways, have I given any other reasons for Yang? So bad. I had another one that maybe was better. I thought it was bad, and then my computer turned off, and I think this one's worse. But maybe I'll try to think of another one. Okay, bye.